The Battle of Christophsis. The Republic was supposed to win. Anakin Skywalker was supposed to save the day, but a masked figure appeared on the battlefield and stopped both armies with nothing but the Force. 100,000 battle droids froze mid-step. 20,000 clone troopers collapsed unconscious. Within 24 hours, half the Jedi Order would abandon their posts. Within 48 hours, Palpatine would trigger Order 66 in desperation. And within 72 hours, the Empire would rise over a galaxy that knew exactly who to blame. Revan had returned, and the Clone Wars died screaming. 3 days before Christophsis, in the unknown regions where no Republic ship had ever travelled, something impossible happened. A Sith preservation chamber, abandoned for 4 millennia, finally failed. The ancient technology had been designed to last forever, powered by the Force itself, sustained by Sith alchemy that should have endured until the stars went cold. It lasted long enough. When the containment field collapsed, Revan's eyes opened for the first time since the old Republic fell. Through the Force, he felt the galaxy screaming. Not the screams of death, though those echoed across 1,000 worlds. No, this was worse. This was the scream of betrayal. The Jedi, his Jedi, the Order he'd fought to protect from the Mandalorians and the Sith Empire, had become generals. The Republic, the democracy he'd bled to protect, was devouring itself. And beneath it all, like a cancer-eating reality, he sensed 2 Sith Lords orchestrating the galaxy's suicide. He'd spent 4,000 years trapped in his own mind, watching the Sith Emperor's plans unfold in endless repetition. Watching empires rise and fall, watching the cycle repeat. He knew exactly what needed to be done, not through power, not through domination, but through truth. His first stop wouldn't be Coruscant or the Jedi Temple. It would be a battlefield, because nothing revealed the truth of a war faster than blood. When Revan's ship descended through Christophsis' atmosphere, every commander on both sides felt a presence in their minds. Not words, not a message, just the absolute certainty that they needed to be at specific coordinates at a specific time, or something worse than death awaited them. The sensation burned into their consciousness like a brand, inescapable, undeniable. Admiral Trench, commanding the separatist forces from his flagship, had faced Jedi before, had killed Jedi before. But this presence in the Force tasted different, ancient, wrong, like standing at the edge of a singularity, feeling reality itself begin to bend and tear. His cybernetic systems screamed warnings his organic brain couldn't process. He redirected his entire fleet's firepower toward the vessel. Hundreds of turbo-laser batteries, enough destructive power to level a city, converged on a single point. The lasers never connected. Every single shot curved away as if space itself bent around the Ebon Hawk, redirected into empty void. Revan hadn't raised shields. He simply existed, and reality accommodated him. Below, Anakin Skywalker felt the disturbance ripple through the Force, and his blood ran cold. He'd felt power before. Stood beside Master Yoda, the most powerful Jedi alive. Sparred with Master Windu, whose connection to the Force was legendary. Even sensed Chancellor Palpatine's hidden strength. This was different. This wasn't power. This was limitless. The battle stopped, not slowed, not paused. Stopped. Every blaster, every droid, every clone trooper's weapon simply deactivated simultaneously, as if someone had flipped a switch on the universe itself. Lightsabers flickered and died, their plasma blades collapsing back into their hilts. Ships lost power and drifted on momentum alone, their engines silent. In the center of the battlefield, where Republic and Separatist lines met in a tangle of trenches and barricades, Revan appeared. He didn't walk from his ship or descend from a transport, didn't use a jetpack or force jump. One moment the space was empty, contested ground between 2 armies. The next, he stood there, perfectly still, his mask catching the planet's pale sunlight like polished obsidian. As if he'd always been there, as if the universe had simply forgotten to place him until now. Around him, the Force created a sphere of absolute stillness. Inside that sphere, nothing moved without his permission. The battle droids froze mid-step, their programming unable to comprehend what was happening to their systems. The clone troopers collapsed unconscious but unharmed, their neural connections temporarily severed as Revan shut down their brains like turning off lights. Every living being within half a kilometer simply stopped, held in place by a power they couldn't understand, couldn't fight, couldn't even comprehend. Anakin tried to move toward the figure. His muscles wouldn't respond. Every nerve in his body fired signals that went nowhere, stopped by something deeper than physical paralysis. Ahsoka, standing beside her master, felt her entire body lock in place like carbonite. Even her lungs stopped working for a moment before Revan allowed them to resume, granting permission to breathe. The message was clear. This being could kill them all with less effort than it took to breathe. But he didn't. Instead, something invaded every mind on the battlefield. Not words, not visions, pure knowing, forced directly into their consciousness without permission or filter. The war was false. Both sides served the same master. The Republic was being devoured from within by the very corruption it claimed to fight. The Jedi had betrayed their purpose, becoming the warriors they'd sworn never to be. And everyone on this battlefield was already dead. They just hadn't stopped moving yet. The knowledge burned itself into their minds like acid, impossible to forget or deny. Then Revan released them. The sphere of stillness collapsed. Weapons reactivated, systems came back online, neural connections restored. But nothing happened. The battle didn't restart. No one moved. No one fired. Because every sentient being on that planet had just experienced true power, and they all understood one terrifying truth. Nothing they did mattered if this being decided otherwise. Admiral Trench, desperate and terrified, ordered the orbital bombardment of Revan's position. Every ship in the Separatist fleet opened fire simultaneously, enough destructive force to vaporize a mountain range. The beams struck the surface and simply vanished, absorbed into the Force like water into sand. Revan didn't block them with a barrier, didn't deflect them with his hands. He unmade them, converted pure energy back into nothingness with a gesture, as casually as one might wave away smoke. Anakin made his move. The Chosen One ignited his lightsaber and charged. Obi-Wan reached out through the Force, but the warning came too late. Anakin's blade descended toward Revan's neck. The lightsaber passed through empty air. Revan had moved impossibly. One moment he stood in the blade's path. The next, he was behind Anakin, one hand resting on the young Jedi's shoulder. The touch lasted less than a heartbeat. Anakin collapsed. He remained aware, his body locked in place, while his mind experienced every possible future simultaneously. Padme dying in childbirth while he stood helpless. Padme dying because of his choices. His children growing up hating him. His children never being born. The temple burning. Master Windu dead by his hand. Palpatine revealing himself. Palpatine winning. Palpatine losing. Every choice. Every consequence. All of it happening at once inside Anakin Skywalker's mind. When Revan released him, Anakin couldn't speak, couldn't move beyond breathing. Obi-Wan tried to help his former Padawan, but Anakin flinched away. His eyes held knowledge no being was meant to carry. He'd seen too many futures, knew too many outcomes. The Battle of Christophsis ended without a victor. Admiral Trench withdrew his forces, unwilling to engage an enemy who'd neutralized Anakin Skywalker without visible effort, and Anakin sat in the dust of Christophsis and wept, not from pain, from understanding. Hours after Christophsis, every holonet terminal in the galaxy activated simultaneously. Republic, Separatist, civilian, military. Even the most secure classified networks buried beneath Senate security layers, encrypted with codes that would take 1,000 years to crack. And they all displayed the same information. coordinates, hundreds of them. Every secret prison where the Republic held political dissidents, every separatist droid factory hidden in neutral space, every Senate member who'd taken bribes from the banking clan, every Jedi Master who'd covered up a Padawan's fall, every clone trooper facility where inhibitor chips were being manufactured and installed. But Revan didn't just reveal locations, he provided evidence. Financial records showing the banking clan funding both sides equally. Classified communications between Dooku and Palpatine, proving the war was orchestrated. Video footage of Jedi Council meetings where they voted to ignore the Force's warnings. Every crime, every lie, every betrayal committed by both sides, presented in exhaustive detail. The information was so comprehensive, so perfectly organized, that it could only have come from someone who'd accessed the deepest archives of both the Republic and Separatist alliance. Within hours of the revelation, the Senate dissolved into accusations and violence. Senators who'd been secretly profiting from the war found mobs outside their homes. Coruscant security couldn't control the riots. The banking clan discovered their accounts frozen by their own security systems. The evidence of funding both sides now undeniable. Count Dooku's communications with Palpatine, carefully encrypted and hidden for years, were broadcast in their entirety across every news network. The Separatist Council learned their leadership had been manipulating them toward intentional defeat, sacrificing their worlds to prolong the conflict. Most damaging of all, the information revealed the inhibitor chips, not just their existence, but their purpose. Every clone trooper in the Grand Army of the Republic carried a biological bomb in their brain, waiting to turn them into assassins at a single command. The Kaminoans' communications with Palpatine, discussing Order 66 and 65 other contingency orders, designed to eliminate anyone who opposed the Chancellor's authority, became public knowledge. The clones weren't soldiers, they were weapons with a timer. Clone troopers began removing the inhibitor chips using emergency field surgery, following instructions that spread through their ranks like wildfire. Many died in the process, their brains damaged by the crude extractions. But those who survived spread the procedure to others. Entire battalions went dark, refusing to report to their Jedi commanders or Republic superiors until they understood what had been done to them. Palpatine's carefully orchestrated conflict began collapsing under the weight of revealed truth. Revan walked into the Jedi Temple through the front entrance. No stealth, no deception. Every Jedi in the building felt his presence like a weight pressing on their chest. Temple guards activated their lightsabers. Masters converged on the entrance hall. Revan stopped in the center of them all and removed his mask. The face beneath was human, scarred, ancient beyond measure, and completely serene. Master Windu demanded surrender. Revan's response was to reach into the Force and pull. Every Jedi in the temple felt their connection to the Force strengthen impossibly, and with that strength came everything they'd been suppressing. Years of doubt, decades of ignored instincts, centuries of buried emotions. Padawans collapsed, overwhelmed by feeling their master's true emotions for the first time. Knights suddenly remembered every person they'd loved and abandoned. Masters felt the weight of every student they'd failed, every time they'd sacrificed principle for political convenience. Only Yoda remained standing, though even he staggered. The ancient Jedi Master looked at Revan and finally understood. This wasn't an attack. This was surgery on an order that had been dying for centuries without realizing it. Revan began walking toward the archives. Jedi tried to stop him. Their bodies wouldn't respond. He'd locked them in place, and they could only watch as ancient holocrons activated, forbidden texts lifted from sealed vaults. Artifacts floated around him like attendants. He revealed truths, the Council's own records, their private communications, their secret decisions. How they'd known about Anakin's marriage but ignored it because they needed his power. How they'd covered up Jedi who'd fallen to the dark side. How they'd become generals despite thousands of years of doctrine opposing it. Master Windu broke free and attacked. His purple blade descended toward Revan's skull. Revan caught the lightsaber blade with his bare hand. The energy sizzled against his skin, but didn't burn. He held Windu's most powerful strike as casually as catching a thrown ball. The statement was clear. The Jedi couldn't stop him. Revan released them all. The paralysis ended. But the damage was permanent. Half the Jedi in the temple walked out that night, and across the galaxy, as word spread through the Force, thousands more simply stopped. By dawn, half the Jedi Order had abandoned their posts, not to join the Separatists, but to think, to decide whether the path they'd been walking led anywhere worth going. Ahsoka Tano was among them. She didn't say goodbye to Anakin, who'd been recalled to Coruscant after his breakdown. She simply left. Palpatine understood his plan was collapsing ahead of schedule. He couldn't wait for the perfect moment. It was now or never. The next day, Palpatine seized absolute power. He declared the Jedi Order traitors and activated Order 66 18 months ahead of schedule. But he could only trigger the chips and clone troopers who still had them. Thousands had already undergone emergency removal surgery. Those clones simply stood confused as their brothers suddenly opened fire on Jedi commanders. The purge happened, but it happened wrong. Instead of 90% casualties, barely 60% of Jedi died. Dozens of masters survived because they'd left the temple. Dozens more were saved by chip-free clones who fought their own brothers. Revan had been on Coruscant when it happened. When Order 66 activated, he reached out through the Force to every Jedi he'd touched in the temple. The warning came as a spike of pure danger, 3 seconds of overwhelming premonition before the first blaster bolt fired. 3 seconds, barely enough time to ignite a lightsaber and dodge. It was enough. Not for everyone, but for hundreds who should have died with no warning. Those 3 seconds meant the difference between execution and survival. Master Plo Koon ejected from his fighter before his clone pilot opened fire. Master Luminara force-pushed her battalion backward. Knight Ayla Secura blocked the first volley, then fled into the forests with chip-free clones running alongside her. The galaxy burned, but it burned with survivors who knew the truth. Palpatine's empire began its reign over a population that hadn't been deceived. They'd been conquered, and they knew the difference. As Palpatine declared his empire, Revan stood on the temple steps and watched the transformation. He could have stopped this, could have killed Palpatine, could have revealed the Sith Lord's identity to the Council, could have taken control himself. But he'd learned something in 4,000 years of captivity. Power didn't break cycles, it perpetuated them. Every Sith who'd ever ruled the galaxy thought they'd be different, and every single one fell to the same pattern. So he'd chosen a different path. Not to rule, to teach. Force both Jedi and Sith to face their failures. Make the galaxy see the manipulation for what it was. The surviving Jedi felt it, a presence binding the dead to the physical world. Revan wasn't letting them go. Hundreds of Jedi who died in Order 66, instead of becoming one with the Force, remained, trapped between life and death. It wasn't mercy, it was insurance. These Force ghosts weren't dark or light. They were spirits bound to his will alone. They couldn't fight, couldn't speak, could only observe and remember. An army of witnesses that would watch every crime the Empire committed, and when the time came, they would testify. Palpatine stood in his throne room, finally alone, surveying his empire. He'd won. Despite the premature activation, despite the information leaks, despite the chaos, he'd won. The Jedi were broken, the Sith ruled, and he was the most powerful being in the... His lightsaber was gone. The Emperor reached for his weapon and found empty air. He spun around. Revan stood in the center of the throne room, holding Palpatine's lightsaber loosely in one hand. Behind him, manifestations that should have been impossible. Force ghosts, hundreds of them. Jedi who died hours ago in Order 66. Masters, knights, and Padawans whose last moments had been betrayal by the clones they trusted. All bound to Revan's will, neither dead nor alive. eternally witnessing. The ancient warrior hadn't come to kill the Emperor. Not yet. He'd come to deliver a message that didn't require words. Palpatine felt it directly in his mind, forced past his defenses with overwhelming power. This empire existed because Revan allowed it. The Sith ruled because he permitted it. And when he decided the lesson was complete, when the galaxy had learned what it needed to learn from this particular cycle of tyranny and rebellion, the Emperor would kneel or die. But not today. Today, the Empire would grow. Today, Palpatine would think he'd won. Today, the Sith Lord, who'd spent decades planning his ultimate triumph, would sleep in his palace, believing he'd achieved victory. And every night afterward, he'd know that somewhere in his empire, an ancient force walked, watching, waiting, gathering an army of the dead that no Sith power could touch, until the moment came to end not just the Empire, but the cycle itself. If you've enjoyed this journey through an alternate Star Wars timeline, there are more untold stories waiting to be discovered. Join our growing community of Star Wars enthusiasts who believe in exploring these what-if moments that could have changed the galaxy far, far away. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and activate notifications to catch our next alternative Star Wars story. Each tale offers a new perspective on the characters we love and the choices that define them. Remember to share your thoughts in the comments below. What other pivotal moments in the Star Wars saga would you like to see explored differently? Your ideas might inspire our next adventure. May the Force be with you, always.